So I'll introduce myself. Hello. Rosie McLoone.
Ellen Joel Hofer.
From Glasgow,
Germany.
I have been living in Gothenburg.
I've stayed in Scotland for almost 10 years now. I think we're talking about a lot about EU nationals in the UK. We're talking a lot about the UK citizens that are in the EU. Essentially, we're both in the same boat. We're in a boat of uncertainty.
I got to a point where I sort of felt that I needed a change, kind of professionally and personally. I feel very blessed that I've had the opportunity to go there, and if it wasn't as easy to move to Sweden as it was at that time, I would never have met these amazing people that I have met. Especially the UK citizens who are there, everybody is worried. Everybody is like, I don't know what I'm going to do, I don't know how it's going to affect my job, how is it going to affect my healthcare, how is it, do I have to apply for citizenship, am I going to have to go home? I just don't know what's going to happen. It sort of seems like people who have moved into the EU, they're sort of forgotten about.
As a teenager, there was a lot of trouble in my family, which eventually led to me not having a roof over my head at a time when I was still going to school. And the best way for me to make something of my life from where I was standing was to use what I already had, which was English skills and a lot of guts, basically. And I applied for a job and got an answer within 15 minutes and booked a ticket for the next day, and that was me done with Germany. And I stayed because the people, because of the landscape, because of what the society is able to do and overcome, and because I believe in this place.
For me, watching what the UK is becoming from afar it's quite depressing, actually. And I mean, I moved out to Sweden with the intention of coming back at some point. Right now, I do not want to come back to the UK with the direction that it's going in.
Politically, it's been very difficult in the UK for the last couple of years for EU citizens. I arrived in Scotland, and Scotland gave me the feeling that I was an equal. I never felt like I wasn't treated like an equal here, and I had different experiences in other places of the world. The Brexit vote, as it was approaching, was in me something that caused deep dread. I could feel that things were shifting in the way that debates were going about immigration and how they remained entirely factless.
I think it's silly to say that everybody who voted to leave the EU is a racist. That seems to be something that's being peddled around. I don't think that's the case at all. I think that a lot of people who did vote for it, it was a sort of protest. It was because they feel disenfranchised and disillusioned and cut off. And the EU sort of happened to be the fall guy.
A whole horde of people, in the case of EU citizens, over 3.2 million, became undesirables without any concern for the real facts and clearly without any political input that would put this right. There was active movement to stop relevant information from being released to the public because this scapegoating mentality supports what the government is trying to do.
97% of decisions that are made for you are made by the UK government. And that's kind of, I think that's where the blame should be placed. People need to start looking, to that mob down the street in Westminster, before they start thinking the EU is to blame for this.
I think in terms of Scotland, it's important to understand that 3% of the population are EU citizens. It's been overwhelmingly positive in terms of the contribution that EU citizens make.
I found it really unfair that 16, 17-year-olds weren't allowed to vote in the referendum because, it's their future that we're talking about, and the people that that voted for Brexit, it's not going to affect them so much as it's going to affect, the people who are just coming through now and they want to go and study and work in the EU. And I also know a lot of people who are looking to get out of the UK because they don't want to be a part of, wherever it is this country is going right now.
If you have formed your opinion on the EU in the last 3 years, chances are that your opinion has been influenced by people who have a lot to gain from manipulating you. If you feel critical about the EU, you have all right to be critical, but if it makes you blind to the fact that the EU is a major contributor to the wealth in Scottish society and the UK overall, you're missing the point entirely. A good example for this would be social housing. The biggest investor in social housing in the UK is the EU, and they will not be contributing from Brexit onwards.
Whether it's the BBC, the Daily Mail, the Sun, anything owned by Rupert Murdoch, people will just consume whatever it is that's placed in front of them.
That kind of negative sentiment that seems not to come from within a negative attitude within a person, but from the media environment that they're currently surrounded by, is very scary.
I think it's really important that we start to sort of try and educate that not everything you read in the media is true. And, people voted for Brexit based on what was given to them.
Scotland is a great inclusive society, but no place in the world is safe from discriminatory behaviour or xenophobic thought, and we need to be very careful how we speak about great amounts of people, small amounts of people, people in general, because there has been a definite shift.
So the promises were made that if Scotland remained part of the UK, we would remain part of the EU, and that has obviously not happened. And now I think justifiably there are calls for a second independence referendum.
I think in the context of the UK, I'm actually delighted for Scotland because we have the best chance to self-determination, the best chance to democratic representation of all levels of our society. I feel a lot more sorry for people living in England who don't have their own devolved governments, but at the same time, all of this can be taken away, and you have no idea how quickly it can be wiped away.
But at the same time, I think there's a fatigue, there's a sort of voter fatigue with people. People are sick of referendums. I think people are sick of elections, they're sick of politicians. And I think for Scotland, it just seems to be going in such a different direction to the rest of the UK. It's a very open society now. It's very accepting. We want immigrants. We want people to come here and work and contribute. I think it's too soon right now to have another independence referendum. I would absolutely love it because I'm a big yes supporter. But I just think when I read, there's still so many sort of unionists and people who are just so against the idea, so completely against it.
From a personal point of view, a referendum after Brexit will not save me and my life in the UK. So the timing of the second independence referendum is crucial. I think in a way Brexit is a great gift to Scottish independence because we can see that it was ill thought out, that there is no logical, fiscal, social argument for Brexit that truly makes sense, that has integrity or even legs. So we will be able to see the tide turning for the UK. We already are. But for EU citizens, it is important that we have this referendum before Brexit happens because there are a lot of people on their way out already, and there's a great deal more of us that will have to leave after.
So, I mean, for me, I think the least thing that we could do right now would be to let's just find out what is actually going to happen with Brexit. Because nobody knows, even the government doesn't know. Government doesn't know what they're doing. And nobody has any idea of how genuinely it is going to affect, other than negative so far. But maybe it will work. But I doubt it very much based on the horror stories that are coming in every day. And I think for Scotland, it would be the best thing possible for it to become independent and just move forward with the world. We know that there's a train wreck coming, not just for the UK, but for our personal rights. And it's been a very challenging situation that's called many EU citizens to action and to greater awareness of the context that they're living in. Seeing how the UK government has treated the EU citizens that live in the UK right now, it's embarrassing. And, I would like to think that, the kind of other European governments will have some more sort of understanding. I'm torn because I know I wouldn't be able to swear allegiance to the Queen and take British citizenship in the knowledge that this is
what would require the sacrifice of my EU citizenship.
We'll probably have to apply for Swedish citizenship at some point, which wasn't really part of my plan. But, you know, like I said, I don't want to have my right to work and live abroad in the EU to be taken away from me. And, you know, I sort of resent that potentially has been taken from me, you know, because of a vote that was just based on lies and, you know, misinformation and ignorance and, you know, Nigel Farage.
It is about balancing whether Scotland becomes independent or whether it is time to leave.
You're swimming, but without any direction. The current's sort of pulling you in the opposite way that you want to be going in, and you're fighting against it, but you can't do anything. It's out of your hands. And that's kind of the worst thing, I think, for people, is just the uncertainty and not knowing.